All right, folks. Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum has been active in Florida politics since he was a student at Florida A&M University, where Will Packer also went to school. He became the youngest person elected to the Tallahassee City Council, now at age 38. He is the mayor of that city, and he is trying to become the first black governor of Florida. He joins us now via Skype from Tallahassee, Mayor Andrew Gillum. So, Mayor, glad to have you on the show. I know, when is the primary?
Yeah.
When is the primary?
The primary in this state is August 28th, Roland.
All right, so everybody out there, I need y'all to understand, because tomorrow's our last day, I need to get the black folks on as fast as possible. So that's why I had Stacey Abrams on yesterday, who's running for governor of Georgia. And that's why I got Andrew on today, running for the governor of Florida. So that way we got this out there, so at least it'll be on YouTube.
Go ahead,
that's why we trying to rush as many black people on the air as possible. So you're running for governor. There are several other Democratic candidates. Why do you want to be the next governor of the Sunshine State?
I appreciate that, Roland, and thank you for sneaking us in before you change platforms, man. And first of all, we're extremely happy and so appreciative of what you've done to elevate the conversation in our community, particularly during this age of Trump. Your voice and the many panelists that you bring on are more necessary now than ever. As it relates to this race, we've been under Republican control for the last 20 years in the state of Florida. Roughly 46% of the folks in our state say they cannot make ends meet at the end of the month. Our education system is being turned over to private for-profit corporations, and many of our kids are being denied what I believe is an important contract between the government and its people, and that is that every child ought to have the opportunity to learn. And so I believe that you shouldn't have to be from a famous family or be able to stroke your own check to become governor of the state of Florida in order to compete. That regular people just like me who grew up in Miami-Dade, Florida, to my mother who was a school bus driver and my daddy who worked construction, should also be able to compete, have our ideas heard, and also get out there and advocate for working people again in the state of Florida. And by way of the passage of this tax bill last night, it's made it even more evident that we need champions for working people in government so that we can get a come up too.
You also, of course, have in Florida, you have the felon ballot initiative that could very well provide voting rights upwards of a million plus. I think it's like 1.5 million. And so are Republicans in that state opposed to that ballot initiative? And where do you stand on that ballot initiative?
Yeah, I'm a strong endorser of the Felons Rights Restoration constitutional amendment, which is exactly where we ought to put this thing in the Constitution. We've had it before where we've gotten our rights restored temporarily by a governor, and then Governor Rick Scott came in and took those rights directly away. We are one of the few states that still have this kind of Jim Crow era policy, and we need to repeal it. And the good thing about it, Roland, is that there does not appear to be organized opposition to the great work that Desmond Meade and so many others are doing around rights restoration. As a person who has a brother that has a felony record, who found it very difficult to find a job, who had to find his own business, is now a car washer and does power washing. I know how difficult it is once you've made a mistake in this unforgiving society to be able to reintegrate, to be seen as a human, and to have agency over yourself, both economically, but also politically. And so the ability to get rights restored in 2018 is a huge driver for many of our voters, I believe, and I think it's going to transform the politics in the state of Florida come 2018.
Greg Carr.
Good morning, Brother Mayor. And I've been following you since you were student body president at Florida A&M, brother. So my question is very basic, and Roland's kind of touched on this, and you just said it in terms of transformation. How are you going to transform the state of Florida as it relates to electoral politics? How important in building your coalition is not just speaking to issues, but getting people to think very differently about how they should participate in the electoral process?
Yeah, no, you bring up a good point. So just for example, in the state of Florida, the Democratic nominee for governor has lost the race by fewer than 1 point. In a state of 20 million people, we've lost by fewer than 70,000 votes twice. And that's after having been significantly outspent in that race. It still came down to a few. I will tell you, I am still feeling extremely buoyed by what we saw happen in Alabama. We know that if we're able to turn out all voters at just a point or a smidge higher rate, that we stand a chance of winning back the state of Florida. It's so important that we communicate to our voters, one, that we're going to be their champions. If we nominate candidates on the Democratic side that are indiscernible from the candidates that are nominated on the Republican side, then I can see very well how it is that our voters stay home. We got to be willing to stand for what we believe, to speak proudly about it, to stiffen our spines to the fights that a lot of people try to keep us from having, and then convince our voters that we're going to be champions once we get elected to public office. There are too many examples of where we have had folks switch on us once they get elected or not be fierce defenders of us. That won't happen in our case. And again, that's one of the reasons why I'm getting all across the state of Florida trying to convince voters that we just got to turn up the heat on our voters just a little bit more. And if we do that, we can win back this state from the Republican stronghold of 20 years.
Excellent, excellent. Well, let me just tell you, Miami is someplace that's very near and dear to my heart. My mother was born and raised in Miami. My grandmother's house is right next to the Bunch Park pool. If you know Miami, you know what I'm talking about, right? And so an issue that is very important to me is the safety and security of our seniors, especially with so many of our baby boomers, my parents, that a generation beyond that, now beginning to retire. And so you're now here in Washington, we're grappling with this tax bill that could legitimately put that safety net at risk: Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. Where do you stand on those issues?
Well, you've heard from my own home state senator, Marco Rubio, who gave out the secret recipe before the tax bill was ever voted on in the House and the Senate. He basically said, next up are entitlements: Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security reform. That will have a deleterious impact on seniors in our state. I mean, again, we're talking about the folks who have given the best part of all of their lives to building, sustaining, to growing their families, to trying to make sure that at the very least when they retire, that they can retire with dignity, with safety, with security, and that they're able to live out their last days on this earth with the comfort of having a roof over their head, having their bills paid, and to be able to access their medications that are life-saving in many instances. And the Republicans have made it extremely clear that their interest is in propping up their major donors, jet owners, and the corporations who, again, get to control what happens in that party and are not looking out for little everyday working people, middle-class people in our state. And we got to pull the Band-Aid off that and make sure that we're communicating as clearly as we can to seniors, as well as working folks, that this party that they have decided to give a chance to in leadership is not in their best interest, not economically, and certainly not here in the state of Florida when it comes to some of the social programs that many of our seniors rely on.
Last question, Cleo Monago.
Greetings, Mayor. It's good to meet you. And there's no secret that Florida has been a challenging place for Black people, particularly in the wake of law enforcement. And I was wondering what kind of progress, if any, has been made to make Florida State a safer place for Black people, particularly in the context of police treatment?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I have to say that Florida's not alone here, right? I mean, we see far too many examples all over the country where it's extremely dangerous to be a Black man particularly, but a person of color in America. And some of the things that we've done, obviously, in my capacity as mayor, is we've done more extensive police training. We tried to bring the community into our law enforcement agencies to provide real live feedback, to create additional cultural competency for folks so that a gesture by a person of a darker hue isn't considered more life-threatening to law enforcement than somebody of a lighter hue. We have to, in my opinion, achieve greater societal change here, greater cultural change in understanding and sensitivity. And I believe that building on the example of what we've done here in my own community, that we've got to do the same thing across the state of Florida. That's why I'm asking for a chance. It does matter who's in leadership. As I was once told, if you're not at the table, then you're likely on the menu. We need to be at the decision-making table where a lot of these policies and the kinds of justice programs that we like to see, restorative justice, adult and youth civil citation, a reform of the criminal justice system, and yes, the restoration of former felon rights, are all the kinds of policies that we've got to put in place to once again give agency to folks. Roland, I'm again thankful to you and your panel for having me here.
Appreciate it.
I would encourage if folks want to know more about us and this race that we're running to follow us at andrewgillum.com. We need your support now. It is wholly possible in 2018 to elect a representative and have a reflective democracy in states as diverse as Florida, where roughly, I believe about 47% of the folks here our people of color, but we want to be a representative for all people, particularly working folks who, again, want to be considered in the decision-making process.
All right, Mayor Gillum, we appreciate it. We don't know in terms of what we'll be doing, what things look like on TV1 in 2018. Of course, will be on Tom Joyner Morning Show for all of 2018 as well. So we'll be covering your race.
Weekdays on TV1.
I will never lie to you.
Oh my God.
Roland Martin.
He doesn't want to talk to us. He wants to ignore us.
Uncensored.
Hell no.
That ain't gonna cut it, boo.
Unapologetic.
No, that is fundamentally false. You are wrong.
Unfiltered.
He wants an America where we all look alike. He ain't talking about black people.
Unrelenting.
You better go work out, because you got a fight on your hands.
NewsOne Now with Roland Martin. Weekdays at 7 a.m. on TV1.